Man, oh man, are Paper Mario fans eating good today? Not only are we getting a remake for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, arguably the best one, well actually there's no argument here, but we also have Paper Mario available on the N64 app on the Switch, which the emulator is not really that great, but you know, it is what it is. And Chuck Conroy finally ending his Why Sticker Star Sucks videos. Great watches, you should go and see them, I indulge it. Yes, after hearing the news on that, I'm pretty sure the Paper Mario drought will finally end, but wait. Hold on, I'm discounting all the games that were spawned due to how underwhelming the Paper Mario series has been. These games came out of the void like wildfire when game after game after game in the Paper Mario series just didn't cut it at every release. I think it started when Sticker Star came out and that sucked, Color Splash was underwhelming, and Origami King was a fun story but lacked memorable moments, and the combat still sucked. It wasn't enough that they discontinued the Mario and Luigi games, but they surgically implanted Paper Mario in one of them, proving everyone's point that Paper Mario was heading towards the shredder with each game release. But then bam, a game came out of nowhere and absolutely proved that the old ways of Paper Mario still worked, that game being Bug Fable, what some would say was the spiritual successor to the original Paper Mario. However, Bug Fable wasn't the only one cooking in the oven, quite literally. Hello my observant indie hunters, and welcome to another episode of the Indie Observer. Today we dine on some doughy goodness as we observe Born of Bread. And as always, I want to say that since I'm reviewing a demo of a game, this is more or less a first impressions. When the full game comes out, I will do a full comprehensive review for the channel. But anyway, my name is Sync Weaver. Let's dive in. Born of Bread is developed by Wild Arts Studios, produced by Dear Villagers, and composed by Robert Kilpatrick. That is a name. Wild Arts is a funny one here. Before making this game, Born of Bread, they made a horror game that looked like I will never play, actually. I don't want to play this. Yeah, no, I'm good. Just how they went from this to this is a complete mystery, but I will hand it to them. This looks hella scary. Now, Born of Bread seems to go all the way back to itch.io, and it was there where I found that they made that scary game called Helltown, which also released in 2017. I think I'll just try to get somebody else to play this. From what I can surmise, Born of Bread was put into development somewhere before 2020. The first update for Born of Bread was in 2021, and through that time, the Twitter account has been keeping the fans up to date. Let me just say the Twitter account is absolutely hilarious. Good on them for being funny. Oh, about that development team. They are a French-Canadian team who are the very essence of chasing a pure dream. Making games I'm sure they would like to play themselves after they make it. And no one here is more important than the other. Well, maybe Chi-Chi, obviously the true leader of the team while acting as the mascot. This one here is where the brains come from in the Wild Arts studio. I have a huge appreciation for developers like this, making games for the sake of the game itself and not some AAA garbage. I shouldn't say that. That's kind of mean for saying AAA garbage. Because there are plenty of good AAA games out there, but I feel that the ones at the front line are just, you know, not very well represented. I mean, if you look at what we have in terms of representation of AAA games, it's coming from places like EA or Activision Blizzard. You will see that AAA games will try to follow a trend. You know, they'll have more free-to-play games, they will have more microtransactions, everything needs to have a battle pass. And don't even get me started on how many games want to follow the trend of live services. So seeing a team making something as pure as Born of Bread gives me the biggest blow of fresh air in the face. You could say I've been lifted by their presence. Not only have they been having fun online with their Twitter account, but setting up holiday events, interacting with other indie games, and just having fun all around. Dare I say, they are in the fun little corner of Twitter rather than the dumpster fire it actually is. So, I suggest following the Twitter account and bringing some sunshine whenever you can when you go into that accursed app. Now for the publisher, Dear Villager seems like almost a haven for indie games. Looking down the list makes me want to at least try them, one of which I did actually some time ago. I think I remember playing this for free in some way. Maybe I was invited to actually play the game. I don't know if I still have it in my Steam account. I'll have to check. Nonetheless, the look of the publisher seems quite professional, and I have to say they look very homely. Like, they're comforting, and they don't have to show off that they're a big business with big games. I think the word is humble. I think that's what I was looking for. Humble, yeah. If anybody is interested in the games that they publish, link is in the description. Lastly, we have the composer Robert Kilpatrick. Their SoundCloud is kind of bare, but I can hear good music when I hear it. Obviously, when talking about Paper Mario-like games, they usually have a very whimsical-like nature to the melody. There are songs on YouTube that come from Born of Bread, whimsical and lighthearted, very right-feeling tunes for the game. I have to give it to Robert Kilpatrick for knowing what to make, but that name could be less threatening to all Patricks in the world.
Oh, please wait!
It'd be ironic if he played Patrick in that new Nickelodeon All-Stars game. That'd be kind of funny. Okay, so we need to have this conversation now. For a while, the genre for these types of games have always been Paper Mario-like, but I think it's time for a change on that. While I was investigating the history of Born of Bread, I noticed a sort of direct called the Paperverse, a direct style appreciation for Paper Mario-like games, even though some of them are not very RPG-like, nor paper-like. In fact, I think this one was supposed to be Undertale's. Well, after watching the whole thing and following their Twitter, I've come up with an idea. For sure, we have a name for Paper Mario-like RPGs, usually called Paper Mario-like or Paper RPGs. I want to start a trend in where we can come up with a genre much to the like of Metroidvania, and I think we have two choices. The first is obviously Paper RPGs, something I will agree is a very staple and understanding name for a genre that deals with paper-like characters in a 3D world that just so happens to be an RPG. But I think we could do better, and this Twitter, this celebrated event, had already made the best name for the genre. Paperverse. Much like Metroidvania is a mainstay genre in video games, I think Paperverse can too. Or we could just settle with Paper RPG. I think that's kind of boring though. Well, the choice is up to you guys. I will leave it up to the viewers. Paperverse just sounds better, and it wasn't even my idea. This celebration of paper games should be noted as the real reason why I think Paperverse should be its own genre. And if you agree, let's start making that a thing when discussing games like this. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah. Born of Bread background. It's obvious that Paper Mario inspires this whole game. The first two characters are a direct reminder of Mario Luigi, and the world being colorful and beautiful as it inspires nostalgia for the older crowd, while being bright and fun for the younger crowd. I can't wait to talk more about it when the game comes out, but for now, let's talk about this demo. Born of Bread has a very simplistic nature to it, very much to the style of Paper Mario. And before we go any further, I do like to talk about the story if one is present in the game. So think of gameplay as all around knowing the game. Okay, so how does this start? Well, with a loaf of bread. To be more precise, we start with Papa Baker, who was in the middle of cooking up a meal for his country's queen. While making this meal, Papa Baker was suggested by a mysterious guard who gave him a recipe book to cook from. After readying the ingredients and throwing it in the oven, something very strange happened. A boy made of bread popped out of the oven, and all I can ask is, who's willing to eat this guy? Not to mention the direct metaphor of bun in the oven. And what sort of ingredients turns bread into a sentient being? Did they just put organs in that thing? I don't know. That's a little dark. I mean, yes, this is sentient bread, but come on, it's still food. Sorry, my stomach's still talking. I like bread. Anyway, Papa Baker takes a liking to his created son and names him Loaf. Like, yeah, a loaf of bread, sure. But I always related loaf to a lazy couch warmer. Papa Baker is then called by Her Royal Majesty, and Loaf was told to not move. So he starts wandering around like a kid always do. Loaf is exactly what you think, by the way, the very essence of silent and pure, but expressive as a character. Even though Mario himself in the paper games was a silent protagonist himself, he didn't express much emotion in his games. The occasional scared face for sure, but that's about it. Loaf, on the other hand, with what I could call an art style akin to Steven Universe, you know, the style of expressive pseudo-anime emotes with simpler bubbly animations. Well, due to this, Loaf is as expressive as any cartoon character, and you can tell that almost everything he does is because he's curious, acting like a child that was just born, which he is. I love this character. You have no real reason to follow anyone, but Loaf understands who his creator / father is and respects him due to his care and kindness. The guy made a boy out of bread and is already treating him with the utmost care like a father. I genuinely like Papa Baker and Loaf being together. I mean, when you accidentally literally make a bun in the oven and it turns out to be a sentient bread boy, what else are you gonna do? You gotta take care of that, you know? Papa Baker is gonna have a talk with that oven. I mean, who's gonna, you know, have Loaf on the weekends? So as Loaf wanders around the castle, he comes across this shiny looking gem that just so happens to be available for picking. Looks like this guy is not even gonna try. Loaf makes his way to the dining hall where Papa Baker is getting yelled up and down by the Queen, who is exactly the opposite of Princess Peach in almost every way. Loud, rude, mean, and obnoxious. Papa Baker tries to explain why her dinner is late, explaining how he accidentally made a sentient bread child instead of a pastry, but the Queen wasn't having that, and evil bad guys. Okay, so to explain this, we need to jump back to before Papa Baker. In the forest not far from the kingdom, 3 explorers and their underpaid laborer was investigating a ruin with 5 coffins. One of them had the bright idea to open one because plot reasons, I guess. 5 bad people come out and they seem to be searching for a certain stone, detecting it in the nearby castle. After sneaking in through the front door, they made their way to the dining room where are the guards. And after reaching the dining room, they confront Loaf for having the stone on his person. Now, Loaf did try to fight back, but after a rightful blaze of the Queen, both Papa Baker and Loaf are sent flying out the window, Paper Mario 1 style. And much to the like of that game, Loaf does find himself in the middle of a forest, having to learn how to defend himself thanks to his father. Now I have to comment on that. They basically did the same plot as in Paper Mario 1, where Mario gets flown out the castle window and lands in the middle of a forest. Loaf and Papa Baker goes through the same thing. And the fact that they did the same thing means that they're like, hey look, this is definitely a Paper Mario game. I appreciate people who like to remind others that, yeah, we were inspired by this game. You know what's weird? It's always the unlikely professions that know how to fight in these kinds of worlds. Plumbers, chefs, artists, a loaf of bread. After some exploring, Papa Baker and Loaf encounter a raccoon who seems to be lost and directionally challenged. Explaining that he got separated from his family, Lint the raccoon stayed in a makeshift tent writing stories and eating acorns. Meanwhile, where he needed to go was directly to his right. He looked rather sad being stranded there, but for plot progression, Loaf and Papa decided to take the boy, since he also had a map that told them where to go. Along the way, Loaf and Lint are taught by Papa Baker how to fight with command prompts. This here is a sight for sore eyes. In the original Paper Mario, it took a literal hour to get to the action commands, but the slow way it taught you how to play was understandable since the game was being played mostly by children. Well, thanks to Papa Baker for putting his own son and some other's child in harm's way, they make it out of the forest and make their way to Papa Baker's shop when all of a sudden, bam, he's arrested by the Queen. And thus, the demo ends here. Now, I for one am not asking for a free copy for a review, but it'd be much appreciated, wink wink. Look, this game is fantastic for a man of my biased nature. I played Paper Mario since I was a child myself. I played all of them, and only had good things to say until Sticker Star. The nostalgic feel Wild Art Studio implemented in Born of Bread was felt way too hard while playing this demo. The art, combat, and whimsy of the characters befits the game people like myself missed and loved during the heydays of Paper Mario. The art is definitely hitting home for me, using a combination of paper-like characters and fauna with 3D cartoon aesthetics made me feel like I was back in the early 2000s. You know, when the best Paper Mario game came out on the lunchbox. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door made great use of this during that time. Using the 2D in a world of 3D method gave Paper Mario its own style, and I'm certainly not gonna complain here. I love this art style. I love it through and through. I can't get enough of this, and I'm glad to see it being used in the best way in modern times. However, later down the line in the Paper Mario games, things started to turn into paper everything. Characters were paper, yes, but the world became cardboard and paper mache. The paper aspect of Mario wasn't what people admired the most, but the characters, the world, the fun to be had. Somewhere down the line, the act of paper was misconstrued to being the aligning feature of Paper Mario when all it ever was to players was an aesthetically artistic choice. Like Sticker Star, Color Splash, and Origami King played heavy on that aspect. Even Paper Jam had Paper Mario use paper powers all the damn time. How many times did I say paper in the last few minutes? Holy crap. In some ways, however, I understood why they did it. If Paper Mario was supposed to separate itself from the other Mario RPGs, which doesn't exist anymore, then sure, finding its own identity would have been a fine idea. But every single one was an RPG, and every single one felt like a hollow form of what it wants to be, like the games were crying out to be whole or something. Born of Bread didn't hold back and proudly says that the art style is what it is, the world you play through. Just because it's paper doesn't mean that Loaf is going to start fighting papercraft objects. I mean, Origami King made me so upset that you were actually fighting staplers, scissors, and colored pencils. Like, jeez. Now, speaking of fighting, I find the command system for Born of Bread to be done well. A mix of it being simple for anyone to use while also being active enough to keep players on their toes. From a wheel that you have to time properly to wiggling your control stick back and forth like a wild child, the action commands are simple and straightforward. Sadly, I don't think there's any jumping in the game where you can time a jump right on top of an enemy. I think that's just going to be a Mario thing. Not saying that's bad, but having some abilities be seen for accurate button presses was a staple for Mario RPGs. This is huge in Super Mario RPG, which should be out by the time this video is released. And boy, I cannot wait. Battle systems like these do need a monochrome of skill, so I do see why this isn't a thing in Born of Bread. And nothing's really missed without it, as long as the resulting success is satisfying. And while all abilities pertain to the badges Mario had in his adventures, Born of Bread decides to take a weapon ability and skill tree approach. But don't get me wrong, they do have something of a badge system here, seemingly for passive traits like health and resources. Could be more to it in the full game. Loaf will come by these weapons on his adventure, and he will have to equip him in his Resident Evil 4 style backpack. These weapons that fit within the pack are then available for use in combat. On the other hand, his companions seem to have a skill tree system where their abilities depend on a selected skill within a list. I think this allows for a full revealing of options, seeing how in Paper Mario, partners didn't have as many options as Mario, though their abilities helped all the same and were essential to the adventure. And much like in the Paper Mario series, partners and companions had skills Mario did not. In Lint's case, he could dig up mounds of dirt. Of course, these abilities will help Loaf traverse the world he's in, as we see some of these abilities in the trailers Wild Arts put out. So the importance of companions seems to have a very huge part in this game, unlike in some recent Paper Mario games. Cough, cough, cough. Well, actually coughing. Now, since we have some world interactions here, I can only assume that there will be secrets all over the place. Especially seeing how you need to find these fire spirits, which are hiding in the salamander-like molds. And if I haven't said it once already, I'm going to say it again. The world looks and feels amazing. Recent Paper Mario games still retain this feel of being in a lively world, and I can admit that, yeah. But the only problem is the generic feel of these NPCs being everywhere, so much to the point that the only identity for most people was Toad. Just Toad. Some with a bit of personality, but it was all Toad. And thankfully, Born of Bread looks like you have different kinds of people all over the place with different personalities. Thank goodness. I mean, I don't know if people will agree with me on this, but I would rather see different kinds of peoples and faces and races all over the place rather than seeing the same Toad everywhere. They can be different colors for sure, but they are still all Toad. But let's wrap this up. The game is the very essence of a Paperverse game. Yes, I'm going to push the narrative of turning Paperverse into a genre, but I can't wait to play more Born of Bread later when it comes out. So let's recap. Born of Bread has that wonderful, faithful feel of that paper RPG. From the world's aesthetic to the very animation of the gameplay, everything exudes the Paper Mario game I wish I played after 1,000 Year Door. The story is already wonderful, a boy born of bread and is completely naive of everything in the world and is going on an adventure with odd characters most likely trying to aid his Papa Baker. A story that's simple with a ton of potential for being funny. The gameplay itself is simple and easy to understand with evolution on top, using a combination of weapon skills along with a skill tree for companions. And instead of using a hammer, Loaf uses a ladle. Nice. Plus, you can pet the animals. Well, most of them. Some of them try to eat you. But if I have to say anything, and this is just a bit of criticism, I do find the platforming kind of odd. This has been a thing since past Paper Mario games where platforming felt a bit off. Acclimating 2D characters into a 3D world can be challenging, so I can understand why it feels a bit off, but it's still very noticeable. But I don't think it's really that big of a deal. Platforming isn't the biggest thing in this game. I think the RPG aspect is. I don't really think there's anything else to be addressed. The game looks good, runs well, and I can tell it'll be an interesting story. Although running well will probably be subject to which console you play on, so if you're going to play it on the Switch, yeah, good luck. So, with that being said, I have to give Born of Bread a solid full attention. This means I think everyone's eyes should be on this game, not for just the paper RPG or paperverse genre, wink wink, but also because of the promise this game seems to have. I think AAA games, even those that are great, seem to have lost some aspect of just being fun. Of course, we're not counting Nintendo because they apparently don't do no wrong, but even if you're encountering AAA games that you really do like, for example, God of War or Elden Ring, sitting down and just having fun seems to be a lot more work than is needed for a AAA game. I think Born of Bread retains that fun that a lot of us are missing, because when it comes down to it, it's always, I need to be in this battle royale this with Fortnite, or it needs to be this creatively huge impossible game like Minecraft. It needs to be accessible to everyone, that's why it needs to be free to play. And games tend to need to be played all the time. They want you to spend all of your time playing that game, which is the reason why we have live services, which is the reason why competitive games have you logging in all the time, like Counter-Strike, Valorant, or League of Legends. But Born of Bread is simple. You buy the game, you play the game, you go through the story, you beat it, I'm sure you'll want to come back to it later. It is that replayable. That is what a game in true essence is supposed to be, in my opinion. And I think that's what we need in RPGs as well, you know, games that don't take over 100 hours to beat. Anyway, I look forward to Born of Bread. It's coming out on December 5th, and I'm going to buy the game, and I'm going to not ask for a review copy. I was just kidding. I will try to support the company the best I can. If they give it to me through their own volition, I will let you know the next time I come out with a review for Born of Bread. Yeah, this video is kind of long for a first impression, but yeah, my reviews are much longer than this. Anyway, what you guys think about Born of Bread? Did you play it? Are you going to play it? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like what you saw today, please consider subscribing. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a good day and happy hunting.